It was one of those afternoons when the house loomed larger than existence itself. Sunlight poured into the living room, casting long, golden streaks across the hardwood floors, creating a warm and inviting atmosphere. The soft murmur of the air conditioner filled the room, my only companion as I sat on the couch folding laundry. My fingers danced through the fabric, the rhythm of the task so familiar that it flowed effortlessly, requiring little thought from me. Yet, my thoughts were anything but still. It slipped my mind when Greg had last pressed his lips to mine. A heartfelt kiss that took your breath away and ignited a longing for more, instead of a fleeting farewell as he headed off to work. Though the years had passed, the ache of absence lingered on, a constant reminder of what once was in our own home. My husband had transformed into a distant figure, consumed by a whirlwind of meetings, a torrent of emails, and a relentless glow of his phone screen. Though he was not there in body, his absence resonated deeply, a palpable void that lingered in the air. As I glanced at my reflection in the window, the golden rays of the late afternoon sun danced upon my face, revealing the delicate lines that were beginning to weave their story around my eyes. At 33, I found myself caught between the innocence of youth and the weight of experience. No longer the carefree girl I once glimpsed in the mirror. My hand glided instinctively to adjust the strap of my camisole, the delicate lace brushing against my skin. The fabric embraced me, a delightful mix of warmth and playful allure. For a fleeting moment, I found myself pondering, when was the last time someone truly saw me? And then there appeared Nathan. He had taken up residence with us for several months, ever since he completed his college journey and came back to gather some savings while embarking on his quest for employment. At 22, he embodied all that Greg had once been: vibrant, brimming with life, and exuding confidence effortlessly. At first, his presence was a stark reminder of the chasm that lay between my husband and me. Yet it had recently transformed into something altogether new. His laughter echoed through the house, a melody that brought warmth, while his eyes sparkled with excitement as he shared his dreams for the future. Despite my efforts to push it from my mind, I couldn't help but observe how his t-shirts hugged his chest and how the faint scent of his cologne lingered in the air after he was gone. It was misguided to entertain thoughts of him in that manner. He recognized it, but the heart dances to its own rhythm, indifferent to the dictates of right and wrong. The echo of footsteps broke the spell of my daydream. Nathan found himself in the kitchen, rummaging through the depths of the refrigerator. The gentle clink of glass bottles echoed in the air, accompanied by the soft shuffle of his bare feet gliding across the cool tile. The house was enveloped in a newfound warmth, the air thickening around him, as if his very being had the power to transform the ambience. "Nathan," I said, my voice unwavering, betraying none of the storm brewing within me. He emerged in the doorway moments later, his tall silhouette illuminated by the warm glow of the kitchen light. He wore a plain t-shirt and sweatpants, his hair a bit messy, as though he had just stirred from a peaceful slumber. "Would you be so kind as to assist me with a matter?" "Of course," he replied with a casual ease. Stepping into the room, his relaxed assurance only intensified the irresistible attraction I felt for him. I averted my gaze, my fingers awkwardly working to unfasten the bra clasp hidden beneath my camisole. "The strap keeps slipping," I shared, my voice lowering to a gentle whisper. "Would you kindly tighten?" "Is it for me?" A moment hung in the air, a delicate pause that lingered like the last note of a melody, poised to vanish into silence. Then I sensed his presence drawing nearer. My breath caught as I felt his hands brush against my shoulders, his fingers grazing the thin. He tightened the strap, securing it firmly. His touch was steady yet gentle, intentional, and it sent a thrill coursing down my spine. "Is everything as it should be?" he asked, his voice soft, barely above a whisper. "Indeed," I reply, my voice scarcely rising above a whisper. The room seemed to shrink around us, the space between us palpable and heavy, diminishing with every fleeting moment. His fingers danced a moment longer than necessary, and I could sense the warmth of his breath brushing against the nape of my neck. It was mesmerizing how something so simple could reignite a flame that had been quietly glowing within me for an eternity. As he stepped back, I turned to face him, my hands instinctively reaching to tighten the strap. Even though it was perfectly fine, our eyes locked, and in that moment I caught a glimpse in his eyes that reflected my own emotions, a silent tension, a question that lingered between us, unvoiced and heavy. "Thank you," I said, shattering the stillness. Yet my voice carried none of the ease I had employed before. "Scenario, no problem," he replied, his voice soft and measured, yet he remained still. He stood there, his gaze flickering momentarily to the neckline of my camisole before finding its way back to my eyes. The moment lingered, heavy with unvoiced thoughts that neither of us dared, nor desired, to articulate. And then, as if the very fabric of existence sought to shatter the enchantment, in the stillness, a gentle vibration stirred in his pocket. The sound pulled us from our reverie, and he swiftly reached for it, murmuring something about needing to take a call as he departed the room. I lingered there for what felt like an eternity after he departed, my heart racing within my chest, while my mind revisited every moment of what had just unfolded. It surely carried an air of purity. Yet the sensation of his touch sent a delightful shiver across my skin, and my body resonated with a vibrant energy I hadn't experienced in ages, revealing a different truth altogether. As the night deepened and I found myself alone in bed, the echo of his touch danced in my mind. I attempted to shut my eyes and banish the thoughts, yet they persisted, refusing to fade into the shadows. Deep down, beneath the layers of guilt and doubt, a question began to emerge. If something so small could wield such power, what would it be? What would unfold if we ceased to ignore its presence? The house, once a sanctuary of silence, now buzzed with an electric energy, each heartbeat echoing with the promise of untold adventures waiting just beyond the threshold. That afternoon, the house held a rare stillness, so profound that each creak of the creaking floorboards and the faint, distant hum of the refrigerator resonated in the stillness. In the quiet of my bedroom, I found myself before the mirror, attempting to adjust the strap of my beloved black bra. It had always had a mind of its own, faltering just enough to remind me of its imperfections, much like many other aspects of my life. Yet, on this day, the strap appeared to possess an unusual sense of rebellion. I pulled at it, my arm contorting uncomfortably behind me. Yet, the clasp remained stubbornly in place. My reflection gazed back at me, presenting a silent challenge within my own eyes. Seek help. It was an occurrence that seldom graced my life. Greg was absent once again, a constant in my life, and I had nearly overlooked the chance to seek his assistance. Yet, this day held a unique essence. Today, the weight of solitude pressed down, a shadow stretching endlessly, consuming every glimmer of light. Then, I caught the sound of Nathan's footsteps echoing down the hall, the unmistakable shuffle of his sneakers gliding over the carpet. Without a moment's hesitation, I called out, "Nathan." A moment of stillness. The echo of his footsteps faded, only to draw nearer once more. Indeed, his voice carried a casual ease, seemingly unconcerned, yet beneath that surface lay a warmth that had previously escaped my notice. "I need a favor," I said, glancing toward the doorway as he drew near. He leaned against the frame, one hand resting on the edge, his broad shoulders commanding the space around him. His t-shirt clung to him, a curious embrace that seemed deliberate, yet deep down, I understood it was merely coincidence. There stood Nathan, at ease, self-assured, and naturally engaging. "What's happening?" he asked, a hint of concern etching his brow as his eyes locked onto mine. I took a brief moment to gather my thoughts as the words momentarily stuck in my throat. Yeah, I pressed on, maintaining a light and casual tone. Texas strap, I elaborated, motioning towards my shoulder. It is driving me mad. Could you lend a hand with this for me? The request lingered in the atmosphere, an unseen thread stretched tight between us. His expression shifted subtly, brows arching in surprise before settling into a more enigmatic demeanor. Indeed, he responded, stepping into the room. I pivoted away from him, an acute awareness washing over me, sharpening my senses to the world around us. The afternoon light danced upon the curve of my neck, a gentle glow that seemed to highlight every detail. The faint scent of his cologne wafted through the air as he approached, mingling with the sound of his breathing, steady yet slightly more pronounced than usual. My skin tingled at the brush of his hands against my shoulder, his fingers hesitant at first, then growing bolder as he deftly maneuvered the clasp. Is this acceptable? He inquired, his voice gently lowering to a hush. Indeed, I whispered, almost lost in the air. The atmosphere enveloped us, heavy and electric, infused with an indescribable essence that demanded attention. His fingers radiated warmth, and his touch was a delicate dance of care and strength, as if he were teetering on the brink of something exquisitely fragile. With my eyes gently shut, I let the feeling envelop me like a warm embrace, a gentle caress. Yet it resonated like a beacon of hope. There, he remarked after a brief pause, stepping back just a bit. I believe that will suffice. I turned to face him, my hand instinctively reaching to adjust the strap once more, even though it was perfectly fine as it was. As our gazes intertwined, time seemed to pause, and in that fleeting moment, the world around us vanished at the room. The glow, the gentle murmur of the home. His gaze held an intensity that pierced through me, a look that seemed to unravel the carefully constructed walls I had built around my very being. Thank you, I replied, my voice steadier than I had anticipated. No problem, he replied. Yet he remained still. He stood there, hands resting at his sides, his gaze momentarily drifting to the strap before returning to meet my eyes once more. The moment lingered, tick with tension and charged with anticipation, until the sudden buzz of his phone in his pocket shattered the enchantment. With a clumsy reach, he sought it out, murmuring an apology while casting a quick look at the screen. I shall take this, he said, retreating toward the door. Yet, as he departed, his eyes held on for a fleeting moment, as though he were reluctant to take his leave. I perched on the edge of the bed, my fingers lightly grazing the strap of my bra, now fitting just right. Yet, it wasn't the strap that occupied my thoughts, it was the sensation of his hands upon my skin, the gaze of his eyes that met mine, not merely as his stepmother, but as a woman. The notion hung in the air, unwelcome yet impossible to dismiss. It wasn't merely about Nathan, it was about me, about as I lay in bed that night. I replayed the moment in my mind, every detail as vivid as if it were happening all over again. The way his fingers had hesitated before finding their confidence, the way his voice had softened when he asked if it was okay, the way his eyes had lingered, filled with something I couldn't name but didn't want to deny. Though I understood the weight of guilt pressing upon me, I found myself unable to cast those thoughts aside. The days that followed that pivotal moment felt like an eternity, as if time had conspired to slow down, compelling me to confront the thoughts I was reluctant to acknowledge. Even within the confines of my own mind, I sought refuge in the mundane tasks that filled my day, immersing myself in the comforting cadence of folding laundry, wiping down countertops, and tending to the plants on the back porch. Yet, the memory of Nathan's touch remained, a delicate whisper of perfume that clung to the air, subtle yet undeniably present. When I next laid eyes on him, it was the late afternoon, and the sunlight poured through the living room windows, casting golden streaks across the floor as I sat curled up on the couch, a book resting open in my lap. My eyes danced across the words, yet my thoughts wandered far beyond the page. I could hear him bustling about in the kitchen, the gentle clink of glasses echoing softly, accompanied by the low hum of a podcast he was only half listening to. "Greetings," he announced, stepping into the doorway, a glass of iced tea held aloft in his hand. He paused for a heartbeat at the threshold, then crossed into the room, his very being saturating the atmosphere and lending a weight to the air around him. "You look comfortable," he remarked, a subtle smile dancing at the edges of his lips. As I gazed down at my form, my bare feet nestled beneath me, an oversized sweater hung casually over my shoulders. I found myself in a state of discomfort, feeling both vulnerable and exposed. "It's a perfect day for lounging around," I said, attempting to maintain a breezy and easygoing tone, even as my heart raced in my chest. He chuckled gently, a rich, soothing sound that awakened something profound within me. "Do you mind if I take a seat?" He beckoned, his hand sweeping toward the far side of the couch. "Certainly not," I reply, though the words seemed to tumble out. Too hasty, too enthusiastic. I adjusted my position, creating space for him as he nestled in, the cushion yielding to his presence. He extended his long legs, lightly grazing mine as he settled in, and a shiver raced up my spine, one I wished he remained unaware of. We lingered in quietude for a time, the sole sound being the soft rustle of pages as I feigned reading. Yet the tension between us was thick, an unseen thread tightening with every fleeting moment. His gaze brushed against me, not unwavering but lingering, as if he were piecing together a puzzle. Hesitant to voice the inquiry that danced on the tip of his tongue, "Claire," he said suddenly, shattering the stillness. Her voice carried a gentle timbre, laced with a hint of uncertainty. "May I pose a question to you?" "Sure," I said, but the word caught in my throat. He hesitated, running his hand through his hair in a nervous manner. "The other day, when I assisted you with your strap, was that strange for you?" The question lingered, thick and charged, as warmth crept into my cheeks, a flush of emotion rising within me, while I searched for the perfect words to express my thoughts. "No," I finally said, though my voice was gentler than I had meant it to be. "It wasn't weird, only unexpected," he said, his gaze locking onto mine. "Unexpected." He lingered on the word, savoring its essence, as if searching for the perfect place for it to reside in the space that lay between us. For what felt like an eternity, silence enveloped us, the air thick with unspoken words. The space between us seemed both infinite and yet strangely intimate. Then, as if compelled by an unseen hand, he moved nearer, his knee grazing mine once more, this time with intention. "Claire," he murmured, his voice a soft breeze, barely rising above a whisper, as his gaze sought mine, and in that moment, I sensed something profound within them, an undeniable vulnerability, a yearning that echoed my own. I gently closed the book resting in my lap, setting it aside with care. My hand hovered for a heartbeat over the cushion that separated us, before finally resting there, just close enough to feel the warmth of his leg against my fingertips. His breath caught just slightly, and I sensed the proximity between us, how the slightest shift could bridge the distance completely. My heart raced with such intensity, I was convinced he could hear its rhythm. "Nathan," I whispered, my voice quivering yet firm enough to shatter the stillness. Yet, just as I was about to utter another word, the creaking of the front door swung open, breaking the spell of the moment. Greg's voice rang out from the hallway, bright and cheerful, proclaiming, "I'm home," Nathan recalled as if stung, his face transforming in an instant to a mask of practiced neutrality. I snatched the book from the cushion, flipping it open and feigning interest in the text. even as the words danced and blurred before my eyes. Greg stepped into the room shortly after, his grin broad and carefree. "Hey, you two," he said, letting his briefcase fall to the floor by the door. "What's happening?" "Nothing much," I reply, forcing a smile as I looked up at him. "Just relaxing." Nathan's hands fidgeted against his thighs as if trying to ground himself. Craig's attention did not linger. He kissed my forehead absently before heading toward the kitchen, leaving us alone again. For a long moment, neither of us moved, the weight of what had almost happened pressing down on us. Nathan stood, his movements quick and deliberate, as he left the room. I remained where I was, my fingers gripping the book tightly as I tried to steady my breathing. My mind was racing. The memory of his gaze, his touch, burned into my skin. Whatever this was, whatever it meant, I knew one thing for certain: it wasn't over. Not even close. What had begun as a quiet moment had become something far more complicated, and the thought of what might happen next was as terrifying as it was thrilling. The storm inside me had been building for days, if not weeks, and tonight it felt like it was about to erupt. The house was shrouded in a peculiar stillness, the kind that comes when everything is on the verge of change. The power had gone out unexpectedly, leaving the rooms bathed in flickering candlelight. Shadows danced along the walls like silent spectators to my turmoil, shifting with every faint draft. I was sitting cross-legged on the floor of the living room, a deck of cards spread out before me. Playing solitaire by candlelight felt like an act of desperation, a way to keep my hands and my mind busy. But it wasn't working. My thoughts kept drifting unbidden to the way Nathan's hand had brushed against mine earlier that day, a fleeting touch that left a trail of heat in its wake. He was in the kitchen now, rummaging through the fridge for something to drink. "His thanks," I said, my voice quieter than I intended. I avoided his gaze, focusing instead on the flicker of the candle closest to me. But I could feel him watching me, his presence as tangible as the humid air that clung to my skin. "You're welcome," he replied, his tone equally subdued, and leaned back on his hands, stretching his legs out in front of him. The movement was casual and unassuming, but my eyes betrayed me, catching on the way his t-shirt rolled up slightly, revealing a sliver of taut sun-kissed skin above his waistband. I forced myself to look away, but the image was already etched in my mind. "Power outages always feel so strange," I said, filling the silence, like the world just stops for a while. "Yeah," he said, his gaze unwavering, as if the silence around us held a deeper significance. The weight of his words lingered, thick with unspoken truths. I found myself shuffling the deck of cards, the soft rustle of paper filling the stillness, while Nathan reached for a card, flipping it over with care before placing it down. "Solitaire?" he asked, a subtle smile playing at the edges of his lips. "Just trying to pass the time," I reply, mirroring his smile with a hesitant one of my own. He leaned in slightly, close enough for me to sense the gentle warmth emanating from him. His scent, fresh and crisp with a whisper of the forest, washed over me, urging me to surrender to its embrace. The atmosphere around us grew heavier with each heartbeat, while the candles danced, their flickering shadows weaving a tapestry of secrets in the dim light. Nathan's voice faded into the air as he nervously toyed with a playing card. "Do you ever feel like the question took me by surprise?" Its straightforwardness masking the weight of his inquiry. For the first time that evening, I locked eyes with him, my heart racing wildly in my chest. His gaze held firm, probing for a response I wasn't certain I could offer. I pondered. "Change is inevitable," I finally declared, my voice scarcely rising above a whisper, "even when we find ourselves unprepared for it." He nodded slowly, his eyes locked onto mine. "Yes, that resonates." The distance between us felt incredibly tiny in that moment, infused with a force I couldn't define yet couldn't dismiss. My heart raced as his hand inched ever so slightly nearer to mine. It was a subtle gesture, seemingly brushed aside as mere happenstance, held a deeper significance that could not be overlooked. Claire, he murmured softly, a name that lingered in the air and sent a thrill coursing through me. I found myself at a loss for words. A constriction gripped my throat, and my mind was ensnared in a web of fear and yearning. Suddenly, as if guided by an unseen hand, his fingers grazed against mine, igniting a spark of energy coursing within me. I stood still, my breath held tight in my throat. Yet I remained rooted in place. The candles danced erratically, their flames bending and twisting as if they too were ensnared in the tempest that churned within me. Nathan's hand lingered in place, his touch gentle yet intentional, his eyes probing mine for consent, or maybe even forgiveness. I was captive, rooted to the spot, unable to shift, unable to act. All I could do was remain there and embrace the moment. Wash over me. It's okay, he said softly. If you don't want, he wanted it in a way that scared me, made my skin tingle, and made my heart race. I found myself at a loss for words. So I extended my hand, my fingers intertwining with his, a wordless response to the unspoken question lingering in the air. As the tension mounted, a distant rumble of thunder reverberated through the atmosphere. The house stood firm, a silent witness to the tempest raging beyond its walls. Nathan pulled back just a bit, his face shifting to reflect a deep, unspoken comprehension. We should probably check the candles, he said, his voice steadier now. Yet his eyes revealed the truth beneath. The storm within him continued to swirl. Yeah, I replied, my voice trembling yet resolute. We should. As he stood and began gathering the candles, I lingered on the floor, my fingers still tingling with the remnants of the moment. From his touch, there was an understanding that whatever this was, whatever it meant, it was far from over. The storm had passed for the time being, yet the aftermath was just beginning. The night had been quiet, but the echoes of what had transpired were anything but. Something had changed between us, an alteration that was irreversible. Deep within, I sensed that the real tempest was yet to unleash its fury. The house lay in shadows, save for the soft illumination of the television, which painted ever-changing designs upon the walls. The movie unfolded before us, the dialogue fading into mere background noise, its title and plot slipping from my mind. Nathan sat unusually silent since dinner, his typical easygoing nature overshadowed by tension that echoed my own. I cast a furtive glance his way, my gaze following the contours of his profile, the defined line of his jaw, the way the flickering light danced upon the curve of his lips. He seemed adrift in contemplation, his gaze locked onto the screen yet distant, as though he wandered in a realm far removed from the present. I can change the movie if you're bored, I offered, shattering the stillness. My voice resonated with a steadiness that belied my inner uncertainty. He gazed at me, a hint of warmth flickering in his eyes. No, it's all right. I'm merely preoccupied. What could possibly draw his attention away? I asked, a hint of hesitation in my voice, uncertain if I truly wished to uncover the answer. My breath hitched as his eyes held mine, lingering in a way that felt both electric and unsettling. An unspoken tension hung in the air, an invisible thread weaving us together in a manner that eluded my comprehension yet felt undeniably real. He paused, as if considering the weight of his words, before ultimately responding, nothing of consequence. Yet his expression revealed a deeper narrative. I reclined against the couch, my fingers entwining with the edge of the blanket resting on my lap. The room enveloped me in an unexpected warmth, and the air was laden with an indescribable essence. My heart raced, a drumbeat echoing in the silence, and I loathed how palpable it seemed, as if he could sense it from his seat. I yearned to utter something to shatter the enchantment, yet the words eluded me. Nathan edged nearer, and my pulse quickened, the air thick with an electric tension that crackled between us. For the first time in years, I felt truly recognized as a woman, not merely as a wife or stepmother. Claire, he said softly, my name a whisper that sent shivers down my spine. I turned to him, my heart racing. His expression was a mystery, his eyes probing mine for an elusive truth. The film unfolded around us, its sounds drifting away, overshadowed by the steady cadence of my breath and the thunderous beat of my heart. "What is it?" I whispered, my voice scarcely breaking the silence. "I don't want to make you uncomfortable," he said, each word carefully chosen. Yet the weight of his unfinished thought hung heavily in the air. The silence that followed was thick with unspoken tension, a palpable connection that crackled between us. My thoughts spiraled, a chaotic storm of feelings I struggled to decipher. I knew I had to intervene, to halt whatever was brewing before it spiraled out of control. Yet I found myself frozen, unable to move or speak, simply waiting for the next moment to unfold. "Nathan," I whispered, my voice quaking with uncertainty. "This is not how it should be. We shouldn't proceed like this." I could sense his urgency as he interrupted me, his words slicing through the air. "I know we shouldn't, yet my feelings remain unchanged." His confession washed over me like a powerful wave, pulling me under and leaving me breathless. I felt laid bare and vulnerable, yet there was a part of me that craved to dive deeper into that overwhelming experience. His gaze locked onto mine, revealing a tumult of emotions: fear, desire, guilt, and a flicker of something that felt almost like hope. Just as I was about to speak, he took my hand, his touch both gentle and purposeful. My breath hitched as his fingers grazed mine, and the warmth of his skin sent a jolt through my very being. I ought to have stepped back, yet I remained. Instead, I let him take my hand, his grip a blend of strength and tenderness, as if he feared I might vanish. "I don't wish to cause you pain," he murmured, his voice scarcely rising above a whisper. "Yet I cannot feign that this isn't true." His words hung in the atmosphere, weighty and inescapable. My thoughts urged me to retreat, to distance myself, and to utter something that would bring this chaos to a close. Yet my body surrendered, leaning into his touch, yearning for a connection that had long eluded me. The space that separated us dissolved as he drew near, his face mere inches from mine. I felt the warmth of his steady breath against my skin, and his clean, masculine scent enveloped me, intoxicating my senses. My heart raced with a fervor that felt as if it could echo in the silence between us. Yet he remained steadfast, tilting his head just so, his eyes locked onto mine. And in that moment, the world around us faded away, leaving only the two of us suspended in time. "Nate," and I whispered, holding his gaze despite my trembling voice. He did not respond, but his eyes conveyed a world of unspoken words. He leaned in slowly and cautiously, his lips brushing against mine in a tentative kiss, as if he were waiting for me to pull away. But I did not. Instead, I closed my eyes and surrendered to the moment, enveloped in the warmth of his touch, in the way his hand cradled my face so tenderly that my heart ached. The kiss deepened, growing bolder and more assured, and I felt something within me shatter, a dam that had been restraining years of yearning, frustration, and solitude. My hands sought his shoulders, gripping them firmly as if he were my sole anchor in the tumultuous sea. The chaos of the world around us dissolved, leaving just the two of us and the palpable energy sparking between us. Yet, as swiftly as it ignited, it flickered out. Nathan drew back, his breath ragged, his eyes searching mine with a mix of fear and desire. "We can't," he said quietly. "I don't want to hurt you." "Or him," I nodded, my breath shaky, and reply, "I know," though the words felt hollow. The weight of what had just happened pressed down on me, and I knew there was no turning back. The line had been crossed, and the consequences loomed just beyond the horizon. The silence that followed was deafening, filled with everything we couldn't say. As I sat there, my heart still racing, I couldn't help but wonder what would happen next and if we would be able to survive it. I sat at the edge of my bed, the quiet of the house pressing in on me like a weight. The events of the previous night clung to me, playing on an unending loop in my mind, each moment more vivid than the last. I could still feel the warmth of Nathan's hand, taste the lingering sweetness of his kiss, and recall the way he had pulled back, his eyes reflecting both regret and a hint of something far more perilous. The sound of footsteps in the hallway sent my heart racing, and I straightened instinctively, smoothing the hem of my shirt as if that simple gesture could somehow erase the traces of what had transpired. The door creaked open, revealing Nathan. His face wore a mask of neutrality, yet his eyes revealed the tempest brewing just beneath the calm exterior. "Morning," he said, his voice gentle yet unwavering. "Morning," I said, my voice a little too high and quick, glancing away, unable to meet his gaze. For a moment, we both stood still, the silence enveloping us, thick and heavy with all the unspoken words, until he stepped into the room and gently closed the door behind him with a soft click. "Claire," he said, his tone hesitant, as if he was searching for the right place to start. "We must have a conversation." "I understand," I replied hastily, clutching the edge of the bed. Yet, I find myself at a loss for words. "There's plenty to say," he replied, his voice steady yet gentle. He stepped closer, one foot after the other, until he stood right before me. "Last night can't happen again," I nodded, the words piercing my heart like a dagger. "I know, but knowing doesn't make it any easier," he said, his expression softening. "It doesn't change how I feel." My breath caught in my throat as I looked up at him, my heart racing. "Nathan, we can't do this. It's wrong, it's complicated. Everything worth feeling is complicated," he murmured, his voice a soft echo in the dim light. He reached out, his fingers grazing mine in a fleeting moment that felt anything but accidental. "But I can't pretend this isn't real." I shut my eyes, his words slicing through me with an intensity that was almost palpable. He was right. It was real, and that truth was both exhilarating and frightening. But reality didn't make it right or safe. "We can't keep doing this," I said, my voice quivering with emotion. "If Greg finds out he's too caught up in work to notice anything happening here," Nathan interjected, his tone suddenly sharp. "That doesn't make it okay," I retorted, frustration bubbling up. "You're his son, stepson," he clarified, his voice tight. "And I'm an adult. So are you." His words lingered in the air, and for a moment the room felt impossibly small. I turned away, my hands trembling as I gripped the back of the chair by the window. The sunlight bore down harshly, its brightness revealing too much. "This isn't just about us," I finally whispered, my voice barely breaking the silence. "It's about everything else. Greg, this house, our lives. It's a matter of our desires," he replied gently, "and perhaps, just perhaps, it's also about what we truly deserve." I turned to meet his gaze, my heart heavy with the burden of his words. His eyes sought mine, revealing the same turmoil that had been unraveling my guilt, longing, and trepidation intertwined. He stepped closer, and I remained motionless. "Claire," he murmured, my name slipping from his lips like a secret, sending a shiver down my spine. "Tell me you don't feel it. Tell me you don't want this." I opened my mouth to respond, yet silence enveloped me. The truth eluded my tongue, a secret too heavy to share. I could not deceive him, nor could I deceive myself. His hand reached out once more, tenderly cradling my cheek, igniting a familiar ache within my heart. His thumb grazed my skin, and I felt an irresistible pull, leaning into his touch, yearning for the bond I had long resisted. "I can't do this," I said, though my voice wavered with uncertainty. "Yes, you can," he replied gently. "We both can." Before I could respond, the sound of a car door slamming outside shattered the moment. My heart leapt into my throat, and I pulled away from him, panic coursing through my veins. "It's Greg," I said, my voice urgent. Nathan took a step back, his expression a mix of frustration and resignation. "We'll talk later," he said firmly. I nodded, my mind racing as I moved to the door, my hand gripping the doorknob like it was the only thing keeping me grounded. I heard the front door open and Greg's voice calling out as he entered the house. "Hey, honey," he called, his tone cheerful and oblivious. I smiled as I stepped into the hallway, away from the storm that was still raging behind me. But even as I greeted him, my heart was back in that room, with Nathan, with the choices we had yet to make. The quiet moments of the day ahead would be nothing but a prelude to the chaos that was waiting to unfold. And deep down, I knew that this was only the beginning of a story that would not end here. Led by his tone, cheerful and oblivious, I smiled as I stepped into the hallway, away from the storm that was still raging behind me. But even as I greeted him, my heart was back in that room, with Nathan, with the choices we had yet to make. The quiet moments of the day ahead would be nothing but a prelude to the chaos that was waiting to unfold. And deep down, I knew that this was only the beginning of a story that would not end here. I smiled as I stepped into the hallway, away from the storm that was still raging behind me. But even as I greeted him, my heart was back in that room, with Nathan, with the choices we had yet to make. The quiet moments of the day ahead would be nothing but a prelude to the chaos that was waiting to unfold. And deep down, I knew that this was only the beginning of a story that would not end here.